So in this chapter, we'll cover a variety of social program evaluations and introduce evaluation research process, illustrate the different types of evaluation research, highlight alternative approaches, and review ethical concerns. You'll learn about attempts to determine the effectiveness of several programs and policies, including whether or not law enforcement agencies who utilize conducted energy devices, such as tasers, decrease the risk of injuries to both officers and suspects, among others. You'll get a brief history of evaluation research, and then after describing the different types of evaluation research, there's also case studies throughout the chapter that illustrate the various methodologies that are used to assess the different evaluation questions. And then look at basic science and applied research and the demand for evidence-based policies as well in this chapter. Every year, the federal government, combined with the state and local governments, spend billions of dollars to help state law enforcement and communities prevent crime, as well as run programs designed to help victims. Several of the studies that have already been highlighted in this text were conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of some of these programs or policies, such as violence and prevention programs in schools, mandatory arrest policies, the effects of a lawyer at bail hearings, the effects of drug courts. So there's some applied research that has an impact on policy and can be immediately utilized and applied. And then, when we do like a brief history, there's social research that's conducted for a distinctive purpose, and that's to investigate social programs. So we need to think about the research process as a whole and how different parts of that process can be combined. We need to make sure our results can be understood and utilized by practitioners. There's like a utilization-focused evaluation. This helps to emphasize that evaluation should be judged by their utility and actual use, how people in the real world apply evaluation findings. And then we'll take a look at some of the evaluation basics on the next slide. So first, there's units or cases that we enter the program as inputs. Inputs are resources or raw materials that clients and staff use that go into the program. Next, we have some kind of service or treatment that's provided to the cases. A program process or service delivery. This is designed to have some type of impact on the cases. The program process is the complete treatment or service delivered by a program. And then we have output. And this is the services that are delivered or the new products produced by a program. They produce some kind of output, right? So it's a direct result of the program or the service that was used. Program outcomes indicate the impact of the program on the cases that have been processed. So the outcome is the impact of that program. The variation is in both outputs and outcomes in turn influences the inputs to the program through a feedback process. Feedback is the information about service delivery that we get from the process. This can be understood in relation to the interests and perspectives of our program. From stakeholders, stakeholders are those individuals and groups who have some basic concern with the program. So they are good at giving feedback as well in this process. Evaluation projects can focus on several questions related to the operation of social programs and the impact that they have. So things like, is the program needed? This is an evaluation of need. Can the program be evaluated? This is an evaluable assessment. How does the program operate? This is a process evaluation question. What is the program's impact? This is an impact evaluation. How efficient is the program? This is an efficiency analysis. So the valuation of a need or needs assessment, is a new program needed or an old one that's still there? Is it required? or isn't even needed at all at this point. The initial impetus for implementing programs is to alleviate social problems and other societal ailments. This typically comes from a variety of sources, including advocacy groups, moral leaders, community advocates, political figures. Before a program is designed and implemented, it's essential to obtain reliable information on the nature or scope of the problem and then target the population that needs intervention. Evaluation researchers often contribute to these efforts by applying research tools, such as questions, such as what is the magnitude of the problem in this community? How many people in this community are in need of this program? What are the demographic characteristics of these people? Age, gender, race, ethnicity. Is the program proposed or intervention appropriate for this population? So when we look at evaluability assessment, we want to look at evaluation research. So this is pointless if the program itself cannot be evaluated. Yes, some type of study is always possible, but a study specifically to identify the effects of a particular program may not be possible within the available time and resources. So researchers may conduct an evaluability assessment to learn this in advance rather than expand time and effort on a fruitless project. This evaluability assessment is a type of evaluation research conducted to determine whether it's feasible to evaluate a program's effectiveness within the available time and resources. These assessments may have an action research aspect. The researcher presents findings to program managers and encourages changes in program operations. The impact evaluation or impact analysis is the analysis of the extent to which a treatment or other service has the intended effect. It involves questions like, did the program work? Did the program have intended consequences? Did the treatment or program independent variable change the dependent variable? So those are the kinds of questions we want to consider. When we look at like the evaluation of efficiency, we need to look at the efficiency analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and cost-effective style analysis. So the efficiency analysis is a type of evaluation research that compares program costs associated to the program effects. The cost-benefit is we need to identify the specific program costs and procedures for estimating the economic value of the program. And then cost-effective analysis focuses directly on the program's outcomes rather than on the economic value of those outcomes. So this black box evaluation or program theory is the process by which a program has an effect on the outcomes is often treated as a black box. This type of evaluation occurs when an evaluation of program outcomes ignores and does not identify the process by which the program produced the effect. Program theory is a descriptive or a prescriptive model of how a program operates and produces its effect. So program theory can either be descriptive or prescriptive. Descriptive theory specifies what impacts are generated and how they occur. It suggests a causal mechanism, including intervening factors and the necessary context for the effects. Descriptive theories are generally empirically based. On the other hand, prescriptive theory specifies what ought to be done by the program and is not actually tested. Prescriptive theory specifies how to design or implement the treatment, what outcomes should be expected, how the performance should be judged, and then there's a comparison of the descriptive and prescriptive theories of the program that can help identify implementation difficulties that can be incorrect. And then we have theory-driven research or theory-driven evaluation, a program evaluation that's guided by a theory that specifies the process by which the program has an effect. If the program evaluation, in the program evaluation, the research question is often set by the program sponsors. So stakeholder approaches or responsive evaluation is an orientation to evaluation research that expects researchers to be responsive primarily to the people involved with the program. Social science approaches is an orientation to evaluation research that expects researchers to emphasize the importance of researcher expertise and maintenance of autonomy from the program stakeholders. So evaluators who adopt this approach derive a program theory from information they obtain on how the program operates, not just from the views of the stakeholders. So in one somewhat extreme form of this approach, we have the goal-free evaluation. This is researchers don't even permit themselves to learn what the goals the program stakeholders have for the program. Instead, the researcher assesses and then compares the needs of the participants to a wide array of program outcomes. The goal-free evaluator wants to see the unanticipated outcomes and to remove any bias caused by knowing the program goals in advance. And then we have an integrative approach, and this is an orientation to evaluation research that expects researchers to respond to concerns of people involved with stakeholders as well as to the standards and goals of the social scientific community. The integrated approach seeks to balance the goal of carrying out a project that's responsive to stakeholder concerns with the goal of objective, scientifically trustworthy, and generalizability of the results. So does the program have only one outcome? It's unlikely. How many outcomes are anticipated? How many might be unintended? What are the direct consequences of the program action? Which are indirect effects that occur as a result of the direct effects? Do the longer-term outcomes follow directly from the immediate program outputs? So this is all questions, to help us understand if it's a simple or complex outcome. The selection of outcome measures is a critical step in the evaluation research. The outcome decision can have enormous implications. Not every agency really wants to know whether its program works, especially if the answer is that they don't work. We look at strengths of randomized experimental designs and impact evaluations. So there's 3 criteria that we recall for establishing a causal relationship between independent and dependent variables. So that is the association between the independent and dependent variables, the correct time order, so the independent variable precedes the dependent, and then the non-spuriousness, which is to rule out the influence of other variables. Data that's obtained from a true experimental design can provide the best way to determine that all 3 of these criteria have been met. So it increases the likelihood that the research findings are generalizable. The most powerful alternatives to true randomized experimental designs are the quasi-experimental designs that we evaluate in research. This non-equivalent control group design consists of experimental and comparison groups that are designated before the treatment occurs, but are not created by random assignment. And then we look at the time series design, which consists of many pre-test and post-test observations of the same group. Non-experimental designs are a single group is studied only once after the treatment program has been delivered, or we have like a one-shot design that's measures the dependent variable after the treatment's been delivered, for only those who receive the treatment though. So evaluation research for quantitative and qualitative methods identifies the effects of a treatment program. Generally speaking, these are quantitative outcomes. When comparing outcomes between an experimental and a control group or in tracking change over time, quantitative methods tend to be favored. Evaluation research faces obstacles not faced by general social research, sometimes obtaining support and cooperation from program staff and sponsors, as well as the structural separation of research and program funding can be an obstacle. When we do policy, look at policy research, this is a process where the research results are used to provide policy actors with recommendations for action that are based on empirical evidence and careful reasoning. Policy research is a process rather than a method. And then we look at evidence-based processing. This is when the policy has been evaluated with a methodologically rigorous design and has been proven to be effective. With the systematic review, this is a summary review about the impact of a program, wherein the analyst attempts to account for differences across research designs and samples, often using statistical techniques such as a meta-analysis. And then there's something called the Campbell collaboration. This is a group producing systematic review of programs and policies in many areas, which also include criminal justice, social work, as well as education, is all part of the Campbell Corporation. So evaluation research, like the studies examined in this chapter and elsewhere in the text, seeks to determine whether or not one program or policy has a more desirable impact than another. As noted earlier in the chapter, the knowledge that can be applied to policy formation, and for this reason, this is all termed to be applied research. So as a basic science, in contrast to applied research, the main motivation of basic science is to advance general knowledge and or to test theoretical propositions. There's many other ethical challenges that we need that we see in evaluation research. Questions like how can confidentiality be preserved when the data are owned by a government agency are subject to discovery in a legal proceeding? Who decides what level of burden an evaluation project may tolerably impose upon participants? Is it legitimate for research decisions to be shaped by political considerations? Must evaluation findings be shared with stakeholders rather than only with policymakers? Is the effectiveness of the proposed program improvements really uncertain? Will a randomized experiment yield more defensible evidence than the alternatives? Will the results actually be used, I think, is the biggest question, because we gather all this data all the time, but what do we do with it? Are we using it, or is it sitting up in the University of Michigan, stored in a warehouse or a building somewhere? We need to use the results, and figure out what's the most effective way to do so. So, it's important to realize that it's costly to society and potentially harmful to participants to maintain an ineffective program. So we want to make sure that we're, doing right by both parties and all involved in the research that we conduct, as well as what our findings are.